So the PlayStation 5 Slim is here, and today on the channel we are going to take a close look at the system. I've had the system in my possession for about a week now, and we're going to take a look at the things that I like about it and the things that I don't like about it. And of course, we're going to do a full teardown of the system. But before we jump in, thanks to Opera GX for sponsoring today's video. Traditional web browsers were built without gaming in mind, while Opera GX was developed for the gamer who wants complete control over how they browse the web. But what exactly does this mean? Well, Opera GX in a side-by-side comparison with other browsers uses up less memory, less CPU resources on your machine. But not only this, you have complete control over the amount of CPU, memory, and even network bandwidth that you can allocate to the browser itself. It also easily integrates with your social media, including X, Discord, Instagram, Facebook Messenger, the list goes on. You can simply pop out any of your social media apps from the sidebar on the left-hand side. Opera GX also has a massive amount of customizations you can do. You can create your own browser mods or simply select from many pre-built mods from the GX store. Now these offer a complete reskin of the browser. My personal favorite GX mod is known as Universe. It features a dedicated dynamic wallpaper, ambient background music which can be toggled on and off with a simple click of a button, keyboard sounds which I really like, and there are even sounds for opening and closing new tabs. But if you just want to disable individual features of the mod, you can simply do this with a click of a button. Now, of course, switching browsers is a pain, but Opera GX makes this very easy for you to do with a great and easy to use import utility where you can import all your previous settings from older browsers, including your history, your bookmarks, your cookies. And of course, it's completely free, so why not give it a spin? Use my link below to download Opera GX today, and a big thanks to Opera GX for sponsoring this video. So the PlayStation 5 got itself a new look for the holiday. The smaller design, which I'm just calling the PS5 Slim, launched on November the 10th here in the USA. Now of course, there has been some discussion about the system, exactly just how slim is it? Well, there's definitely been some reduction. Sony says the weight and volume are reduced by 24% as compared to the launch model that I have here, and the volume has been reduced by almost 30%, which is a significant thing. Now, to give you guys some quick comparisons between the two systems in terms of size and weight, the PlayStation 5 Slim model on the left, the CFI 2015 model, this is the version with the disk drive, weighs at around 7 pounds. Comparing to the original PlayStation 5, which weighs around 10 pounds, it's a fairly significant reduction. I mean, if you're knocking off 3 pounds off a PlayStation 5, you're doing pretty good here. Now, the vertical height of the PlayStation 5 Slim is around 14 inches, and the vertical height of the original model is around 15.5. Now, taking a look at the front of the system as compared to the original model, you can see here that the USB Type A has been removed in favor of a USB Type C. So we now have two USB-C connectors at the front. The disk eject button has also been removed, and this is a welcome feature because I never remember which button actually ejects my disk from the PlayStation 5 in favor of the button actually on the drive mechanism itself, and also gives a nice satisfying click when you press that, so I'll never have to worry about which button is going to eject the disk anymore. But also you have the standard power button here on the left hand side. Now looking at the back of the system here, you can see that the HDMI connector is now firmly in the middle of the system as opposed to when it was on the original, which was pretty much just right next to the power connector on the original model. But otherwise everything here is the same. So let's go ahead and open up the system here and see what's going on. There's obviously some concerns and issues about the disk drive and the registration that it requires, but we'll get to that here shortly. But let's go ahead and see how easy this thing is to open up. Now, the first thing that I want to tell you guys is opening up a PlayStation 5 Slim is a lot more simple than the original model, where you had to basically pull from a specific corner to get the panels off. Now for the PlayStation 5 Slim, all you need to do to get these front panels off is to just basically lift up like this, and you can see that that panel comes off extremely easily, and you can see the fan here as well as the SSD or the M2 SSD slot here. And the same thing applies for the disk drive cover. You just basically pull like this, and these clips just pop off right that, and you can see that exposes the drive mechanism. Now, the drive, as we know, is detachable, so you can essentially turn this into a PS5 Slim digital model by simply removing the disk drive mechanism. And to do this, all you need to do is lift up this tab here. You can see there's a little indicator here, a little triangle, basically just telling you to just lift up from here. And this drive easily just removes just like this. So right now, essentially what we've done is turned our PS5 Slim with the disk drive into a digital model. Now I am curious to see if we can power on the system without a drive attached. So let's go ahead and do that here real quick first up and see what actually happens. So no real surprises here. Powering on the PlayStation 5 Slim without a disk drive effectively just turns it into a PS5 digital. Now, one question that I did get asked a lot about the PlayStation 5 Slim is exactly what version of the firmware does it come with? So this is a stock PlayStation 5 Slim, has not been connected to the internet at all. And as you can see, we're running firmware 6.00. So this is obviously a little higher than the last exploitable PlayStation 5 firmware revision, which I believe is 4.5 or 4.51. But eventually, maybe, hopefully one day, we'll start to see higher firmwares get exploited. So let's now get the elephant in the room out of the way, and that has to do with the detachable disk drive that comes with the PS5 Slim. We know that the drive requires registration with a PS5 console, and that requires a one-time internet connection for it to do so. Now, if you ask me, the biggest detractor from buying a PlayStation 5 Slim has to do with the disk drive. If you're someone that wants to get a PS5 Slim with a disk drive, you're someone that does like physical media and does like game preservation, then a PlayStation 5 Slim is probably not your ideal choice. In fact, I would recommend that you look for a original PlayStation 5 model, a fat model or the original model, whatever we call it, because ultimately the original PlayStation 5 allowed you to plug the system in without any type of internet connectivity and allow you to play physical media off disk. A couple of things here. This obviously is the new M2 drive slot where you can basically install a new M2 drive. So let's go ahead and show you what's going on here. This is pretty much exactly the same as the original PlayStation 5, but I will give Sony some props here because it does make it a lot easier for people to take their case off. I know some people were a little, I guess, nervous about doing that. And I think before we actually put the system all back together, I am going to install this drive in here as well, just to expand it a little bit. Now let's go ahead and turn the system over and take the plate off the other side. And you can see here, this plate is already, comes off pretty easily. And then this should just pop off as well. So Sony has really made it so much easier to kind of take the panels off, and it's almost a situation where I feel like they were, aware of the fact that people can really kind of do some damage trying to break the plastic or break the clips. So they've really kind of organized it in such a way where essentially you really can't mess this up. I really kind of like this, the way it looks. It's actually very, very thin, and it's also quite light. But Sony is obviously going to start supporting the different replacement plates that you can get and the kind of the custom plates that they'll start to bring out. But this essentially is the kind of the innards of the PlayStation 5 with the plates removed. Now the next thing we're doing here is removing this fan shroud, and just keep in mind when you do remove this fan, you can see already that the screws here are all different size. So if I take this one out, you can see that's also a different length, and then this last one here is also a different length as well. So basically you have 4 separate length screws here for each of these. So just make sure that you keep that in mind, because you certainly don't want to be putting like this big screw in this particular hole here and accidentally drill through something that you shouldn't be, maybe a cable or something like that. And I think that this fan essentially is the exact same fan of the original PlayStation 5 model. It doesn't seem like it's any different to me at all. Now, removing the plastic case from the top of the PlayStation 5 is pretty simple to do. You just need the same Torx T8 screwdriver with the security hole in the middle, and there are multiple screws around the edge of the PlayStation 5 case itself. It's pretty easy to identify the ones that you need to unscrew, and then when you simply have done that, you can just lift off the piece of plastic, showing the metal shielding and the copper pipe and the heatsink. Now, what's interesting about this is that the heatsink and the copper pipe is on the underside of the board. In the previous or the original model PlayStation 5, it was on the top side. Now, you can also see that the Wi-Fi antenna is plugged in, and that is determined by the blue and white cable that is plugged into the motherboard going to the top of the PlayStation 5 Slim case, right by the M2 slot there. And getting the metal shielding off will require you to essentially remove each of those silver screws that are screwed down, and there is a lot of them. There's probably about 20 or so of them that you essentially have to go around the motherboard and remove them individually, and it takes a little bit of time, but it is a pretty straightforward process. I do give PlayStation props for making the PlayStation 5 pretty accessible as far as a teardown is concerned. Now, as you can see on the top side of the motherboard here, the copper piping is front and center, the big star of the show here. And of course, Sony has spent a lot of time trying to address the heat and airflow issues when it comes to the PS5 Slim. It's more important now than ever to get that airflow out of the case as quickly as possible. With the PS5, it was a much bigger form factor, which meant there was more basically circulation around the motherboard to get air out as quickly as possible. But with this is almost a two-pronged attack, where you've got the copper pipe leading directly to the fan area with the heatsink, and also the other side leading directly to the exhaust. So the big fan in the PS5 Slim is basically working overtime to push out that air as quickly as possible. Now, we're almost at the end of the teardown at this point. The only thing we need to do is to get this shielding off. And to do this, there are two screws that you need to take care of, as well as the screws for the clamp on the underside of the SoC, of course. Now, once you've got these removed, we can simply then remove the shielding, and this exposes the SoC. And I will say this is probably the biggest surprise to me when it comes to the PS5 Slim, in that the SoC has not changed. It is exactly the same one as the previous model PS5, and of course, as you can see, we're still using liquid metal, and this is something that is very surprising to me. I felt like Sony may have done away with the liquid metal kind of experiment with the PS5 Slim, but no, it's essentially the same package overall. I would have expected a die shrink at this point when we talk about the third year of the PlayStation 5, but maybe that's something we'll see when the PlayStation 5 Pro is rumored to be announced at next year. Now, as far as how heat dissipates in the PS5 Slim, I did run some tests with my thermal imaging camera. Now, I want to be very clear, this is not temperatures at the die, this is temperatures at the back or the exhaust of the PS5. And just for reference, I'm running Spider-Man 2 with performance mode running at 4K. Now, to basically tell you what's going on here, we're looking at temperatures around 127 to around 140 degrees Fahrenheit. And this is kind of normal. When I did tests with the original PS5, the launch model, we were getting these same temperatures. And this does make sense to me, and it really does tell me that Sony's approach to their cooling and their fans and heat sinks with the PS5 Slim model is a pretty good one, because we're not really seeing anything worse in this scenario. There's not any more extra heat that is being generated. The temperatures aren't any hotter, but things aren't really any different either. So I think this makes the PS5 Slim a little interesting. I would have expected to see a die shrink at this point, but here we are. So there you have it, guys, the PlayStation 5 Slim. It's definitely an interesting iteration upon the original. I think they've done some good things as far as slimming down the design itself, but I think the overarching TLDR here is that if you already are invested in a PS5, you already have one, you don't need to upgrade to a PS5 Slim, and I'm using the word upgrade extremely loosely. I also feel like if you're someone that's interested in preserving your disc or your physical disc collection, then a original PS5 fat model is probably the one you want to get. And I will say, they're going to start going off the shelves here over the next 12 months or so. So if you are thinking about getting a PlayStation 5 and you are someone that is interested in collecting and basically preserving your library of physical games so you can play these games 15, 20 years from now on your PlayStation 5, then you're probably best suited to a original fat model. But the Slim is an interesting update to the original PlayStation 5. Of course, there are rumors about a PS5 Pro coming out next year, so I think if there is truly an upgrade here, it's going to be that instead. But I'm going to leave it here for today's episode, guys. I do hope you enjoyed this look at the PS5 Slim. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And one thing before I do go, I do want to wish everyone in the US a very happy Thanksgiving week. And we'll catch you guys in the next episode next weekend. Have a good one. Bye for now.